Hello and welcome to a very special Rework Volibear video. This has been done in collaboration with Riot to bring you the actual full descriptions and breakdown of the Thor, Odin, Thunder God Bear. That's right, despite the 30 pages of misleading titles and clicky content so far, amongst the lies cometh the truth, and to not only explain the full tooltip, the depth, the numbers, the hidden OP strategies and secrets of our new daddy bear, Riot Lutz, the lead designer, will be joining me for an exclusive sit-down quarantine talk that was actually 3 hours, but I had to trim because content. Lutz also talked to me a bit about builds, runes, and setup, but that will come in part 2 of this video later in the week when we talk and show gameplay. So if you want that ASAP with some good old high quality footage and editing, you know what to do. Smash the like button like Volibear smashes the bridge. Well, if I wasn't a YouTuber before, I am now, I guess. This video will also answer the questions about the nature of Volibear's unstoppable mechanic, the healing passive, his new shield, why towers stop working, and why Godzilla might not be the king of monsters after all. And so we will go in order of abilities. I will show you the tooltip, describe it to you, and then you'll have some discussion and context on how to best use it. But before we do that, I must mention that all abilities, except for his W, have no cast time. The W is still a 0.25 second targeted melee attack, but his other 3 spells are instant and can be cast while moving. Talk about interest in a fluid kit. And to begin with, let's start with the passive. This is called Relentless Storm, and it's where Volibear gains 3% attack speed whenever he deals damage, spells or auto attacks, and that stacks up to 5 times. The lightning claws at 5 stacks, Volibear's claws ignite with lightning, causing his basic attacks to deal 10 bonus magic damage to the 5 closest enemies. He must deal the damage within 6 seconds if he wants to maintain the effect. No, this does not activate any sort of on-hit applications, simply the extension of that auto attack, and the damage scales from 10 at level 1 until 60 at level 18, but in addition to this also has a 40% AP ratio. So the spirit of the old ultimate lives in the new Volibear, and at least we get to, chain some lightning. And not only all of that, his auto attack range in base form is instead of 125 on live, elevated to 150. And with that described, let's head into our interview for the first section. Hello and welcome to the first Riot interview / discussion with Riot Lutz to talk about the beautiful new Volibear rework. How's it going?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Can't wait to talk bear with you.
Okay, so we're beginning already with the puns, but that's normal,
I did say talk bear. That's not quite a pun.
I think I used bare necessities in the emails between us as well. I mean, we cannot be stopped. Okay, so firstly, obviously the reveal was on Friday, and we've had a lot of reactions, some of varied quality. But in this video, yeah, indeed. So obviously with this kit, you've wanted to keep a lot of spiritual successes from the current volley into the rework so that we can always get the feel that our champion has simply evolved and changed. What was the thought process behind converting his passive into essentially the pseudo version of his ultimate that's currently on live?
Great question. This spell was actually the very first one that I locked, and it happened very, very fast. So, when we start creating a champion, we end up going through dozens of different spell iterations and a bunch of crazy ideas. But this one was basically within the first week or 2 of starting Volibear. I knew I wanted to combine the attack speed of W, and I knew I wanted to keep the chain lightning. And so this was I don't want to say like core foundation of what informed the rest of the kit, because it was a pretty tight package of a spell. But what the spell got us was a lot of callbacks to the original kit, which is always good. It helps sell one of the core pillars of the champion, which is, lightning, storm bear, and demigod. It still keeps his bear quality of, I want to be in there, I want to be auto attacking a lot. We knew that we wanted auto attacks to be important on this champion. And then in terms of sort of class or role and how Volibear deals damage, one of the tricks we like to use on Juggernauts is sort of a ramp up time. So yeah. Darius, for example, at 0 blood stacks versus max, huge threat, level increase. Alawi with no tentacles versus 3 or 4 all wailing on you. Huge, disparity in terms of how threatening she is. And so for Volibear, this is sort of what that slot is doing. In terms of why it's 5 stacks versus 3. Now that it works on all abilities, it's actually quite fast to get 5 stacks. And in terms of top lane, auto attacking 3 times and then starting to push your wave with chain lightning is harder to sort of do wave management for compared to 5. So it's actually sort of a secret top lane buff that it's 5 stacks and not 3. It lets you manage waves better.
Yeah, and from a jungle perspective, the more AoE spells we have, the happier we are to clear. And in this case, it has a 0.4 AP ratio, which is decently substantial, and base damage from 10 to 60. And that's, I think, a key point you just said there. It's on abilities, not just auto attacks. So a lot of the previews we're seeing is him just auto attacking, and then, baby Thor lightning sparks come out, and then they get bigger. But in this case, it's on abilities as well. So you can actually stack that in a way that people sort of stack Conqueror quite quickly, with abilities mixed with auto attacks. So
yeah, they'll definitely turn on around the same time, because it's five stacks versus 10 from Conqueror, but it's 2 Conqueror stacks per damage. So the sort of bread and butter combo is going to be Q, which after Q lands, it actually has an auto attack reset after Q.
So that's carried over.
Yeah, so you'll actually do an auto attack very quickly after you land Q. So if you're chasing someone with Q, you'll hit them with Q, do an auto attack, then you'll want to weave in a W during the downtime of that auto attack, and then as soon as W is done casting, your auto attack will be ready again, and that's 4 stacks right there. And so as long as you have cast E either before, during, or after any of that is happening, boom, there's your 5 stacks. And so realistically, you're ready to go, assuming that you execute your bread and butter combo correctly.
That's, it's not actually, what's nice is that I think people like to obviously meme all design decisions ever made, but in terms of complexity, it's not actually that complex, but has a lot of nuance, and I think that's what's quite nice. You read the description, it's simple enough to understand, but then, we could probably spend another 10 minutes talking about the implications with different builds and runes. So I like that you got the carryover from the ultimate, but also we've got all these new implications from essentially a spiritedly similar effect. On the note of the attack speed, obviously being core part of his kit, but the big release of information you had, I believe it was yesterday, was that he has the highest attack speed ratio in the game at 0.7.
Correct. So attack speed ratio is different from attack speed. When you hover over your stats in game and you see your attack speed, and it is at a percentage, and it also shows you attacks per second, that is different than the stat that I'm talking about. Attack speed ratio is actually sort of a secret under the hood lever that we use, and that ratio is basically describing how effective the attack speed that you gain actually is. So if you get an item that gives you, let's just say 20% attack speed, you're like, oh cool, my attack speed is increased by 20%. It's actually not. The ratio is giving you some percentage that is less than 100% of whatever attack speed percentage you're gaining. So most champions, if it says I'm getting plus 20% attack speed, it's actually more like 11 or 12%, because most ratios are in like the 0.6, 0.65 range.
Who was the highest before Volley?
That's actually a great question. I used to know and can't remember off the top of my head.
It's just a random question. I thought I can edit an image in over the top with some 200 IQ 200 year experience memes if you like.
I'll say 2 things. The amount of attack speed that his passive is granting him is very low. Live Volibear's W at rank 5, I believe, gives him plus 75% attack speed, which is ludicrous. It's disgusting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
Whereas this is only 15%. And so is that super powerful? No. But 2 things. One, most of the power of this passive is coming from the Chain Lightning. And to be really transparent about it, most of the power of this passive is actually more Aurelia-esque or Jax-esque, in that whoever you're basic attacking, you're dealing like 30-40% more damage to per auto attack than you otherwise would, and it's magic instead of physical, so it's harder for them to itemize against.
I mean, that's important for anything that might be tankier or not building as much damage. Having mixed damage obviously enables their ability to, exist. actually do something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this case, you got good scaling as well. So,
But just to finish, part two of that, having such a high attack speed ratio means that he's getting more mileage out of this 15% than any other champion would from the same percentage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
His 15% is better than anyone else's 15%.
Mm-hmm.
And why I was allowed to do this, or why I chose to do this, maybe Mark.
Why? Wait a second, I don't know why.
Maybe Meddler doesn't know that I did this, and so maybe I'm revealing things I shouldn't be. Everyone wants to build attack speed on Volibear. I mean, it is a core part of his fantasy, but building attack speed on, yes, he has this big leap, but it takes a full second to get there, and yes, he has some CC resilience, which we've shown, but at the end of the day, he still has to walk through 78 Vygar cages before he can start auto attacking, and so attack speed is actually a very luxury stat to be spending your gold on for a champion like this, and so we really wanted to get a lot of mileage out of it, where if you just build Bloodrazor as a juggler, or if you just build Wit's End as a top laner because you're going up against Vladimir or something.
Well, the classic Triforce, just with that minimal amount of attack speed.
Yeah, I wanted that to be enough. I wanted one attack speed item to be enough to sell the fantasy and be an effective, viable build. So that's why he has this crazy attack speed ratio. And
worth noting, I mean, we could have started the whole passive section with that talking about attack speeds. That attack range has now been increased to 150 from 125. And any Volibear main knows, oftentimes in games, we want to auto-attack, but we can't because we're either not close enough or our bear claws are just not, long enough. But that's been rectified in this case. I think the claws being a heavy part of the kit, I guess we'll get to the W, but extending that attack range is definitely going to feel really nice with this passive overall.
Yeah, the claws are sharper, and he's been following your bodybuilding regimen, I think, because those biceps are giving him some extra reach as well.
I want to human cosplay Volibear and get a wig because I don't have the hair for that, but oh man, those braids. And now we roll on over to the Q, Thundering Smash. Volibear gains 10% movement speed for 4 seconds, or 20% towards enemy champions, and the ability to move through units. While active, Volibear's next basic attack deals 25 plus a 1.2 AD ratio and stuns the target for 1 second. Emphasis on the fact that this is a bonus attack damage ratio and keeps the spirit of the live volley Q in that it matches his auto attack range, which is now 150. The CDR is increased, the mana cost is higher, but there is a second phase to this ability. Volibear becomes enraged if an enemy immobilizes him before he stuns a target. This resets the ability and its cooldown. Hence the increase in the base cooldown, because if you get forced to stop moving, you get to use the ability again. From the tooltip that I released before the section, everyone would notice that the cooldown is actually 2 seconds higher than what's on live. Do you have any sort of discussion about specifically? Let's talk about the movement speed actually, because on live we go from 15 to 25. In this case, we go from 10 up until 30, but that's increased by 10% towards enemy champions. So my question to you would be, does that go from 20 to 40 movement speed scaling towards enemy champions as you rank it up, or does it sort of cap out at 30%?
The rank up incentives are 10 and then plus 5% per rank. So at rank 5, it's 30% movement speed at a baseline, and then that amount is doubled when facing an enemy champion.
Holy shit.
As long as I'm chasing a bad guy, each rank is increasing my movement speed by 10%, not 5.
Okay, but he also has that bonus of I can move through units, which I like that.
Correct. Yes,
I like that.
He is now ghosted for the entire duration.
So I don't have to walk around everything, and by the time I get to them, it's expired. That's good.
Yeah, correct. I was just going to say that the damage is slightly lower.
Yes.
But you may notice this giant number here that says 1.2.
Bonus attack D.
That is the bonus attack damage ratio. So if you have 10 bonus attack damage in itemization or runes, that will be dealing 12 bonus damage.
So there's just baseline damage on live, and now you've given him a fat 1.2 bonus. So, can I build Warrior?
Yes, you can.
Max Q.
So what we've actually found, we're talking about builds now, but
Yeah, we'll
we've
get to
actually
that.
found a lot of success with all 4 juggle items.
Well,
They're all pretty good.
I mean, we've done passive into Q, and you've gone from Blood Razor, and I'm just like, okay, so Warrior, and I guess we've got some more itemization coming later with the rest of the abilities. So
Yeah,
it's nice and diverse.
Good. Yes, and obviously Cinder Hulk is good because Q is applying a hard CC, so it's proccing Bomby Cinder passive.
Yeah, we're getting the Aftershock, we're getting the Bomby Cinder. But I think the big reveal is that Volibear becomes enraged if an enemy immobilizes him before he stuns a target. This resets the ability and its cooldown. That's a very powerful sentence. I think I should let you explain that.
Yes, this is the elusive, unique resilience to crowd control that I have been teasing for many, many months. And this is actually what we came up with after we decided to move away from the permanent unstoppability. And so in its stead is this much tighter, more refined sort of quality of life update to Q, which is still very powerful, but it's a lot more contextual. And if there's 3 forms of crowd control, like let's say Morgana binds you and then Janna tornadoes you 2 seconds later, the power of this is you didn't waste your 1 engage / crowd control tool standing in a root for 3 seconds twiddling your bear claws.
That's interesting. You think Morgana's Q is only 3 seconds?
Yeah, 3 months.
three months. All Volibears just got huge flashbacks to every single game they've ever played, where you just got chain CC'd, and you're like, okay, well, I leave now. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't get to play the game.
Yeah, exactly.
That is why it doesn't deal quite as much damage. That is why the cooldown is slightly longer. It's because he's moving faster, and if he fails the first time, either because he didn't, dodge something, or because they layered their crowd control very well, Volibear just says, oh, too bad. I don't care. I'll just do it again. And the only thing that it costs him is mana. And granted, he's on that cusp of being like, I have problems with my mana if I'm laning, but building Righteous Glory alleviates that. Or if you're jungling, as soon as you get your talisman component, that alleviates that. So there's a small cost to recasting this ability multiple times, but in theory, any crowd control, yes, you still take it, you still have to endure the duration of that crowd control, but as soon as it's over, you just press Q again and you just do it again.
And I think that's the most important thing here. It's not that the crowd control doesn't work, it's just that once it's finished, you get to press Q again, and that's absolutely huge. And now we move on to the W, Frenzied Maul. Volibear mauls an enemy, dealing 10 plus a 1-to-1 ratio of total attack damage plus 6% bonus HP. This is a physical damage, it applies on-hit effects, and wounds the target for 8 seconds, essentially marking them. The attack damage and the bonus HP stays the same, while the base damage does scale up to 110. Now, as you wound and mark the target by using the first curse of W, or otherwise W1, and you use W again within 8 seconds, you will proc a second effect on this ability. If Frenzied Maul is used on a wounded target, its damage is increased by 50%, and Volibear restores 20 health plus 8% of his missing HP. This is now, of course, 50% effective against minions, otherwise lane sustain would be kinda silly. It's worth noting that when you use W the first time on a target, it marks them, and then when you use it again to get the bonus damage, it refreshes the mark, meaning if they don't die, you can actually proc the second effect yet again. And most of us are interested in the healing capacity because his ult passive has now essentially been modified and moved to the W. Because of this new usage and the fact that it doesn't trump his HUD, the cooldown is significantly reduced from 18 seconds on live to 5 seconds in this version, but the range does remain the same. What were the goals, in essence, of conserving the spirit of this ability, but basically bringing it up to 2020 standards?
So we knew pretty early on that we wanted this to be a very accessible, low skill floor champion that pretty much anyone could pick up and have relative success on, within their first couple of games.
As a 32-year-old man, I thank you.
Yes, no super high APM requirements, no 200 IQ big brain plays. Volibear is not a 4D chess player. He is a simple bear, and I said on the subreddit, on Twitter, I've been very adamant of saying he's just a bear. He's going to do bear things. And I really wanted to, I wanted to deliver that in this spell, and so giving him a bread and butter targeted melee spell fit his pattern. It was something that he needed. It was something that was on the original kit that, in this case, we felt comfortable still including. But in order to modernize it, we did a whole bunch of different things to it, including giving it a total attack damage ratio, which, spoiler alert, this is not an auto attack. This is a targeted spell with a cast time, but it applies on hit effects as if it were an auto attack, which includes lifesteal and Sheen procs and your passive and Grasp of the Undying.
Sheen procs. Okay.
Tasty Sheens.
Yes.
And
the total attack damage, obviously it's important to note, is not the same as bonus attack damage. So in this case, the scaling on this will synergize nicely with your good old-fashioned Sterex Gauge, Titanic Hydra abilities, which scale with your HP, of course, and give you more total attack damage.
Yeah, and so I was sure to capture the bonus health scaling as well, because that was something I thought was very important. I wanted Volibear, even when building damage, I wanted him to feel good about building health, because so much of his kit synergizes with it. The E does, the R does to some extent, and then W. I wanted, similar to Malphite, you know, my first project at Riot, which I'm still very proud of. You know, he has armor scaling that helps him deal damage even when building tank. Even though it sounds like you're double dipping and sort of taking advantage in these modern times, that's just sort of a thing that tanks sometimes have to have.
And we use our claws for that, and then we wound a target, so that's a nice new buzzword that we can use, wounding targets. And then of course that enables part 2, which basically is the spiritual successor of the offensive usage to the current W.
Correct. So this was the final missing piece of the kit, actually.
Okay.
We knew that we wanted him to heal, and we knew that we wanted his damage. We call it a damage profile. It's basically like, how does he deal damage, when, and to who?
Everyone.
And everyone all the time. And so for Volibear, what we were finding is that without this mechanic, his damage profile was very flat. It was, I will basically slowly whittle you down with auto attacks and chain lightning. And it was basically like, I'm doing 10 damage per second over 10 seconds to deal 100 damage. Technically the same amount of DPS, but what we did is we sort of poured water out of one bucket and poured it into another. And so we sort of artificially lowered the amount of damage that the first cast of W does to you, an effort to make that second cast very meaty and satisfying and reminiscent of the old like W chunk one shot.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think one of the most fun things to do with Volibear, and has been for many years, is just going with your full combo. You finally reach a target, and just that finisher, really the ultimate Volibear fantasy. And the nice thing is, I mean, I guess top lane Volibears won't have this as much, but jungle Volibears know when we're clearing, because we get the CDR refund from using it. You can actually use it twice, you know, on a camp like a Gromp or Red or a Blue early in the game, because you'll have it up again at the end. So in essence, we can just do that to champions now, you know?
Well, speaking of jungle, here's the biggest buff on the entire kit. I hope you guys are ready.
All right.
Rank 1 W will now deal more damage than a basic attack.
Wow.
Think about that.
Wow. So, you know, I don't have to sit there hitting the blue buff and then press W at like 90 HP and it still doesn't kill it.
It still doesn't kill it. Rank 1 W during your first clear has to be one of the saddest experiences
it's so sad.
in League of Legends.
You feel like you're a baby bear. Literally, you know, the blue buff does more damage to me than my main ability does to it.
Yeah. So those days are over. The wound is that mechanic is actually it looks simple. If you're not a designer, you may not care that much about this, but like to me and even to my team, when I pitched this mechanic, we were all like, this is it. This is what brings the entire kit together for so many reasons. Because I always, every iteration of this kit during development had a heal on it, every single one.
Well, it's a cool part of his gameplay, right? And now the utilization of that passive is one of the main things we love about the champion. And playing in and out of that, great Volibears that play top lane really turn plays around to their advantage just by utilizing this to perfection. And I think bringing that, out of the passive and into the second proc of the W here, for me, it looks it's I think people will gloss over it and not really pay attention to it in terms initially, but when they start to read the description, look at what it actually does, I agree with you. I like it a lot.
Thank you, first of all. This was a skill check that I knew Volibear fans wanted, that they appreciated, that it was those clutch turnaround moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally had so many issues with the live passive in terms of how few times it could actually be used over the course of a game. How deceptively powerful it was in low elo against people who didn't know that it existed. Because even if you have the 1 in 100 games that has a Volibear in it, you may go an entire game as an enemy and never even see his passive turn on.
It's because people are using it on the wolves. I mean, what?
That's the strategy, right? It's like, I will intentionally sandbag.
Use tricks language.
And so I knew that I wanted that skill check in, and to have that fantasy of, oh, you think you've got me? Pull out my Uno card, haha. And so that is actually alive and well. And so what this says thematically and mechanically is Volibear's job is to prey on the weak, to dive in and just have a one-track mind. And he will be rewarded in terms of damage and survivability if he can execute on that, survive in a fight, and stick to a target for at least 6 seconds. And if he can't, if someone is peeling him off of the target that he cares about, and he chose to W that target that has now escaped, well, there goes his sustain. And so in some cases, he may want to bite the Leona, who continually crowd controls him, and sort of sustain off of her with Ws as he slowly grinds his way to get to that backline.
But the thing for me about the W is, while that second part of the wounded, I guess, mechanic is very important and crucial, especially in the skirmishes and team fights in the game, I like that we at least can use W now in at least one iteration, because if you go and do a fight with current Volibear, you go all in, you hit your Q, you hit your E, you start auto attacking, maybe you're managing to get your ult off. If they, flash out, phase rush out, whatever mobility they have, you basically went a full engage combo without being able to use W, because you're waiting until they're low enough that you can actually munch them and do as much damage as possible. Now, at the very least, even if they escape, we have this total attack damage usage of W that we can still use in a fight. So even if we use it on an ADC with a full sort of combo and they escape, we at least got to use the spell before they escaped.
You got to play League of Legends?
I got to play League of Legends with my ability. What? And because it's on a 5-second cooldown instead of 18, flat 18, it means that if they do escape and they're out of the fight, say we did enough damage, you get to use it again within one fight. And I think that's, for me, is as much as I like that the heal mechanic and the second part of the wounded passive, the fact that it's actually split into two and the cooldown is brought down, looks like it's going to feel really nice to be able to use its ability significantly more game to game.
Yeah, this is now your opener in almost all situations.
Yes.
And against a squishy target, it is still your finisher. It is not going to deal 45% of Caitlyn's health anymore. So we need to set expectations.
Yeah. We're not going to chop them as much, but
absolutely. And that 50% bonus damage is it takes the final amount that it would deal after looking at the base damage, the total AD ratio, and the bonus health ratio. And so that 50% damage is actually, if you were to look at the same tooltip, let's say, just because it's an easier number, I'll say that rank 5 does 100 damage instead of 110.
Okay.
That 100 damage becomes 150. The 1.0 total AD ratio becomes a 1.5. And that 6% bonus health ratio becomes a 9% bonus health ratio. Mm-hmm. So the 50% damage isn't just 50% more from the base damage. It's looking at everything. The whole package.
Okay.
And very cheekily, and we will talk more about this when we get to it, but the ultimate grants you a metric ass load of bonus health. Hey, guess what? Your W scales with bonus health. And hey, guess what? your second cast of W, which internally we refer to as W2. We say W1 and
Yeah,
W2.
yeah. I would animate that as well, yeah.
W2 is a 9% bonus health ratio, and so when you're ulted and you W2 someone, that's when you get reminiscence of the original Volibear W, just destruction.
And all those beautiful effects you saw last month in the champion update, these were attributed to E, Sky Splitter. After a 2-second delay, Volibear summons a lightning bolt at a target location. This deals 60 base damage plus 60% AP ratio, yes, that is exactly the same as the Eon Live. In addition, it deals 7% of the target's maximum HP. This is all done in magic damage and also slows the enemy for 40% for 2 seconds. In addition, like with all the abilities, it has a second phase. If Volibear is inside the blast zone as the lightning strikes, he gains a shield equal to 15% of his maximum health, and that also scales with a 60% AP ratio. Interesting factoids about this ability is that while it does take 2 seconds to cast, enemies will only see it 1 second before it hits, and guess what? The range of ability usage is 1100 units. Oh baby! Designed to be a one-hit wonder, seeing as we usually max W and then Q, and that is anticipated to be the same for junglers, laners in support and top lane might actually find utility in using the second. However, there is a decent mana cost and a decent CDR cap. So we've mentioned this now that we can actually use this ability from 1100 units away, which is a full screen away, and that's a far cry away from an instant cast, QE combo flip. Why did you decide that this ability needed to have basically a drastic shift in execution, utility, and feel?
Great question. So this was obviously one of the spells that we really innovated on and completely changed up. And it was also one of the risks that we took because we knew that a lot of Volibear mains had really grown to love the dash interruption and the displacement mechanic, which we actually added quite recently.
That was such a good change.
Only two years ago or so. Great change.
That was so good. Yeah, that really brought him back. Start of season 8.
Ahead.
He was great for a bit, and then you guys nerfed him.
I wasn't working here at the
I
time.
remember that.
Didn't hit the combat pattern that we needed it to hit. Didn't hit the variance. Didn't hit the right type of skill expression. And so we feel that this new E is a lot healthier for the game. It's a lot more accessible, and it's something that when a player uses this, and I guess we'll talk into the specifics of the spell in a second, but when a player casts the spell, it's like the Swiss Army knife 1-point wonder spell on this kit. It can do a dozen things, and there are multiple outcomes for each thing that it does. I think that is the hallmark of a skill expressive ability in our game, is when you can dynamically think about what your exact situation is and how to best utilize your toolkit to get the best outcome possible. That's skill expression to me. So thematically, again, this was our he is a storm bear god. We want to capture him doing storm lightning-y things between Q and W, and passive for that matter. I think we had the bear market cornered. He was doing bear things, and so that opened us up to have this opportunity on E to really lean into the demigod controller of storms. This spell had probably the most iterations of any spell on the kit during development. What ended up happening for most of them is that it made him feel too much like a mage. It made him feel like a wizard bear. And that just felt off-brand to us.
That's different. That's a different thing.
Yeah, and yes, you can build a wizard hat on this bear and deal magic damage.
With that AP ratio, I'm going to at least once.
Oh, yeah, you are. But we knew that this spell still needed to feel visceral and brutal and physical. And so that's why we put so much love into the animation where he is ripping lightning down from the sky very physically. And that's also why we have this shield mechanic, because that is a very physical, visceral component. He has to be in there fighting in order for this to happen. And so we didn't want him just poking like a Xerath and getting the full benefit of this spell. It does deal % max health damage. This is to deal with tankier targets, like his dumb, stupid brother Ornn that is lame.
That's easy now. Easy now. Let's ease up now.
I know where I am.
They're getting along, okay? This is the part on my channel. It's where they're friends, okay? The best buddies.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll skip through the tulips later.
I'm gonna cut that.
Yeah, you can poke from 1100 range, but it's not that strong. Really, the benefits of the spell are the slow and the shield, not the damage.
Exactly.
And so I had to gate a lot of the power of the spell.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, the damage, I mean, most people notice at this point, the base damage at rank 1 is the same, but at max rank is 240 to 180. So it's a 60 damage drop because you're adding that target maximum HP, you're adding that shield, but you also don't want him to go and basically be bottom lane, the new bottom lane version of Fiddlesticks where you're just kind of spamming E, sitting back under the tower. Hey, okay, let me throw an E here, have another one there, and there's no sort of downside to it. But I do think in terms of utility for ganking setup, I think from a jungling perspective, now I get to use my E initially, and if I hit it, that's an added tool that allows me to catch up to my target even without using my Q, so that if I want to save my Q for when they use a flash, for when they try and dash away or whatever it is, it's another added aspect to his kit that we didn't have before, because we'd always have to save our E for the gank, or the classic sort of walk up to them from a good angle, use your E, force them to dash away. Now I can use my Q. In this case, the E, I can think of so many different ways you would use it in a ganking scenario, in a zoning scenario.
Absolutely.
And on that,
zoning is huge on this spell.
Does this give vision? If we hit someone in a blind bush, does it give vision?
No, it does not, and that was a very deliberate choice.
Okay.
But I will say that the clever combo, and this is one of the most skill expressive things you can do, is actually hit confirm your E by stunning someone inside of it while it's charging up. That's the big, if you can do that, you have won that trade.
That's your top lane trade pattern. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you want to use it for guaranteed damage. They're stun locked with your Q, and you've already procced your E beforehand. And because I guess that's the nice thing about this instant cast, be able to use it while moving. I can Q towards you. I know full well I'm going to slap you into the ground, so I'm going to use my E before I even arrive. I like it. It's modern, and I just can't get over the animation. It's a little bit of that a nod to the old ultimate, the live ultimate, right, with the summoning of the lightning as well.
Yeah, hand in the air.
Hand in the air, exactly. Except now you're doing a whole bunch of stuff. But I think being able to, what about in terms of team fighting? Because obviously in team fighting, in late game scenarios, that shield is what you want, right? You want the slow and you want the shield.
It takes 2 seconds to proc, and it's one frame. It's instant.
Oh, it's instant. Oh, it's literally just an instant frame. So you have to be in it, or you don't get the shield.
Correct.
Okay.
You have to be in it when the lightning bolt strikes, which is instant after 2 seconds. It applies damage to anything in that area in that instant. It shields Volibear in that instant.
Okay.
And after that one frame is over, the spell is over.
In jungle, mostly we use our W historically, and then into the Q for the CDR scaling specifically, as well as utility, and then into E. So I think from a jungle perspective, having that be really useful and a huge skill expressive ability just with 1 point, I think is huge. The biggest thing about it though is the 4-second increase to cooldown, and doesn't scale at all. So I think that is where the usage of it needs to be very. You said you wanted the kit, the champion, not to be 200 IQ, to be simple to use, but I still think there's a huge case here where good Volibear players and intelligent junglers and intelligent laners will get way more out of this ability than someone just picking it up for the first time.
Yes, this spell, we want to make this as important to Volibear's success and skill expression as possible, but we don't want him to feel screwed over if it doesn't go perfectly.
And then we can press R. So that leads us to the final ability. Yeah, you see we did that nicely.
We don't have to talk about this one. It's not a big deal.
So we have to talk about this one because it is absolutely ridiculous and made everyone kind of gasp at the size. Cho'Gath has to ult 1,000 things for 45 minutes to get this big, and all of a sudden Volibear presses a button and jumps, 250 range for the damage stonks, and then 600 range overall, transforms, gains 200 health, 50 attack range. That's a nice meaty 200 for those of you who can do basic arithmetic. And this, for me, is interesting. It's for 12 seconds.
And he's ghosted the entire time. And not only that, he disables towers. Now, LS made a very good observation saying it seemed 1.5 seconds. It's close. It's 2 seconds. And yes, LS, it scales 2, 4, and then 6 seconds
at level 16. So, I mean, basically late game, Trick 2G, Omreka's back in the game for you because
they must have forgot.
That's, the towers won't exist. I mean, for 6 seconds, and I mean, not only that, we're skipping on this. Sorry, I can't believe I did this. You also damage the tower.
Sure do.
250 damage. Now...
And you jump over walls if you want to.
And we jump over walls. So again, LS, making you happy. Terrain scaling. The biggest problem with Volibear was no terrain scaling. Now, obviously, I'm not going to use R to... Actually, you know what? I would. That's the Baron Steel. R over the wall. That's the Baron Steel.
I've done it quite a few times in our internal playtest.
Actually, I'm going to address the one thing that sticks out to me most in this tooltip. That damage.
A little bit. It's a little bit of damage.
It's 700 damage at rank 3. Now, 250 is nothing to scoff at. 475 and then 700. However...
Well, if you're level 18 and you are fighting a level 18 Annie, who has, sake of argument, who has no Zanyas or armor runes or anything like that, you immediately cut that 700 in half. The amount of damage mitigation, even from a mage, is about 50%. At those levels, all things being even. So 700 is really about 380, even against a mage. And Volibear does not have room to be building penetration.
No, he really doesn't. No.
Even though this number looks very large, and it is against minions who have 0 armor,
take that, minions.
It's actually not that scary because there's nothing else amping it up, and just the natural resistances of all champions keep it in check. Volibear can use a spell to do so many different things that landing on top of someone to deal damage is actually like third on the list of what you would want the spell to be used for. And it's actually very hard to sweet spot because it is a 1 second, even though it has no cast time, it is a 1 second moment before he lands. And so that is quite dodgeable.
I think the nice thing that you told me was the terrain scaling. Just because if you need to get into a fight, as Volibear currently, and you're on the other side of a wall, it can just feel really hopeless. And I gotta run all the way around it. Let me activate my Righteous Glory just to get there. But in this case, you can actually use that. And because it's 250 for the sweet spot, but 600 range for overall, you said. You can actually jump over the
600 wall. Units away from
so you can actually, so up to 600 range. So you can actually, get over those walls, engage in a fight. And I think that's absolutely massive. And I think what you just said about having it be so many things, and you sort of have to decide in what capacity you want to use it, the CDR is quite high.
Very high rank 1 cooldown.
And that's, I think, is that directed at pro play? Because pro players have a tendency to take strong ultimates and ruin it for the rest of us.
It sure is. Thank you, pro players. I love everything that you do for our game, our community. But you really ruined this for all of us.
Sorry, so. I'm just a very upset Ornn main. It just wants his bloody shield on the W. Anyway.
Yes, it is a higher than normal cooldown, especially at rank 1. Very much by design. What we were finding is, and this is obvious, right? Like no shit. This is going to be true.
Yeah.
Very good at tower diving at level 6. Very good at therefore snowballing a lead. And Volibear already spikes extremely hard in the mid game.
Yes.
Like I would say top 10 champions in terms of mid game power spikes.
We kept that sort of play style consistent.
Yes.
Like early strong mid game spike. Like you want to do stuff now. Except now you can actually.
You actually get to do stuff instead of just wanting to.
But in this case, having a similar in terms of thematics, in terms of bringing that lore to the Rift as well. I think he deserves to have something like this. You want to feel that demigod moment in the game. And everything about his kit speaks to that. But then you press R and you're like, okay, now I really feel like Volibear.
Oh, absolutely. We basically locked his whole kit outside of the R. And when we looked at it, we were like, man, what does this character need? And the answer was actually nothing. There were no gaps in his pattern. He had sustain, he had engage, he had a little bit of crowd control, he had some skill expression. And so Stormbringer, the inception of that spell was, what's the most badass, cool, thematic high moment that can sell the fantasy the best? And that is really the catalyst for what drove everything that it became.
And so obviously from a from continuing that thought, I understand the damage, I understand the bonus HP, we understand having that long cooldown. What was the inspiration for basically bringing back Omraka into this ability? I mean, now obviously it's we have to understand that this is going to be absolutely insane for basically, I think, every skill range from Iron up until Pro Play, being able to disable a tower and do damage to it.
Sure.
Why add this to it? And
what was Riot thinking?
What was Riot thinking? And if I can add to that, do I have to hit the tower to do the damage, or is it just as long as it's in the radius?
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance here that I can go into on the mechanics, but at a high level, we knew that we wanted this champion to be a diver. I've said many times, I had this one word running through my mind the whole time, which was I wanted him to feel relentless. And one of the things that stops you, one of the things that makes you relent, is an enemy tower. And so when we thought about, these pesky towers getting in the way of my fun. And so when we talked about it, obviously we talked about Akali. Obviously we looked at things like Elise. We looked at Kled. We're looking at these champions that can actually do this pre-6 on a basic ability or on a passive that have much higher burst damage and in some cases much stronger crowd control. And so while we did see it as a risk, and we know that there will obviously be some frustration when playing against this, it is not fun to be tower dove
while it's disabled. You're one defense point, right? I can imagine bottom laners now say it's okay, guys. A 4v2, we can use the tower. It's Volibear. We cannot use the tower. Run away, Monty Python.
Yeah. And no, it is not fun to be tower dove. We knew that we wanted this to be one of his core identities, is that he is a diver. He is relentless. He is unforgiving. And yeah, so there's a pretty large blast radius that emanates around Volibear, and that is what slows enemies. And that is also the blast radius for what disables the tower.
Okay.
If the tower gets disabled, it takes the damage.
Okay.
So he doesn't have to sweet spot the tower to damage it, but he does have to sweet spot other enemy units to deal damage.
But then anyone within the radius is slowed by 50%.
Yeah.
Okay. So
which decays.
Yeah, it decays. Yeah, which is different from the E, which is just straight 40 for 2 seconds.
Now, all that said, there are a few very subtle, nuanced things that we're doing in the favor of the poor soul being dove. It is impossible to tell from the gameplay footage, probably very hard to tell maybe even after 10 games, you wouldn't see that this is the case, but under the hood, it's working in a certain way. I do want to bring that up because it does speak to our effort to make this as fair as possible, given that we have committed to having this spell in the game. When the tower gets disabled, it follows a few special rules. One is it retains its current target from before it was disabled. And so if that was an enemy champion, as soon as it comes back online, it will continue to shoot at that champion, assuming that they are still in range.
So we can't use it to save someone that wants to overstay.
Correct. Number two, if it was targeting nothing, or if it was targeting a minion and an enemy champion, including Volibear, does something under that tower to draw aggro from it while it is disabled, the tower will acquire that enemy champion, which means that as soon as it comes back online, even if no one takes any aggro action now that it's back online, it will have remembered that someone drew aggro while it was disabled, and so it will fire at them immediately.
So when you're tower diving with your ADC and they draw aggro because that's what they do, once the immobilization effect wears off, your ADC is still going to die to the tower shot.
Correct. And then number three, and I think this is the most important one, and what separates it from other tower diving mechanics that we have in the game, is that this tower retains its heat up. So if Volibear tanks 2 shots, then disables the tower, when the tower re-enables, it will be on its 3rd shot, which means it will be dealing heavily increased damage.
So that's actually very important, because at least people should know, both on Volley's team and against him, that this is the reality. It's not just, okay, tower doesn't exist and now it exists as if nothing happened.
Right. It's a very powerful spell, but there are a few steps that we're taking to mitigate some of the exploits, especially in the pro scene, with things like Elise and Kled completely negating the heat up because they go untargetable.
Exactly. It makes them so strong, especially Elise. That repel is...
And Repel's crazy, and it's especially crazy at early levels where every tower shot does matter.
Oh, yes.
Whereas Volibear, at level 6, towers matter, but at level 16, they don't, which is also why we increase the duration to 6 seconds, because he can tank another 12 shots anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, man, that's the whole kit.
That's the whole kit. Thank you to Riot Lutz for joining us and giving us all this insider information and understanding of the new Volibear. Hopefully you enjoyed this long format, giving you as much in-depth discussion as possible. Look forward to more Volibear videos coming this week. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment if you enjoyed and learned something. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more videos coming very soon. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.